and I show them my fresh cuts, and I say, I feel like I'm going to die. I feel like I'm going to hurt myself. I don't know what I'm going to do.
Hi, and welcome to Someone You Should Meet. Today's guest I've been dying to speak to since I met him just before Christmas. His name's Aaron Stark, and he was almost a school shooter. Yes, you heard that right. He's almost a school shooter. He's now a motivational speaker and a TEDx speaker, and I'm just delighted to have him on the show today. So hi, Aaron, welcome. How are you?
Hi, Claire, welcome. Thank you for having me.
No problem. As I've said, I mean, honestly, you and I met just before Christmas at a film premiere. It was a great film directed by a local San Diego boy. A fantastic film, but it was actually set on you. You were the inspiration for it. And not to give too much away, it's called Just Another Tuesday. It's just been released, and it's basically based on a school shooting. And you came up on stage after the event and gave the most inspirational, hard-hitting speech I have ever kind of witnessed. And you were gracious enough to chat with me at the end, and you and I agreed to do this at some point. So here we are today. So first of all, can I just ask you to go like right back to the beginning and tell us about your story?
Absolutely. It's a big one. So, well, I was raised in a really violent, chaotic, and aggressive household. Growing up, my parents were drug addicts, very violent, very abusive. My birth dad, he was a Vietnam vet. By the time I was born, he was just insane. And I always describe growing up, the first 5 years of my life were like a Stephen King movie. It was just pure horror, every kind of abuse you could imagine, physical, mental, sexual, just living a horror movie in every way you possibly can. In the most
Aaron, can I just stop you there? So were you a victim of the abuse, or did you witness abuse?
I was, both. I was a victim and I witnessed. My dad was the most violent person I've ever met. So a story from that time, I couldn't have been more than 3 or 4 years old. But I remember we were living in battered women's shelters. We were moving from battered women's shelter to battered women's shelter because my mom was trying to get away from him, but he was just crazy. He was chasing us down. And so we were living in this one, and he managed to find us. And I was playing outside in the yard with my brother. And my dad drove up and managed to talk us. I have an older brother, 2 years older than I am. And my dad drove up and managed to talk us into the car. And so we drove off with him, and he called my mom, told her that he kidnapped us, but that I was already dead, that my brother was going to be dead if she didn't show up at this restaurant to meet him. And so she shows up there to try to rescue him against the protests of the battered women's shelter. They're screaming at her, don't leave, that's not safe. She's like, no, I've got to go get my kids. And so she gets there, and he brought a 4-square tire iron, one of the 4-prong tire irons with him. And he flips over the table and goes to swing back and hit her. And right then, luckily, the battered women's shelter had called the police, and there was a bunch of undercover cops in the restaurant also. And so there was a video clip when I was growing up of him getting hauled out of this place by a bunch of police officers. And it was just, I learned really early on that violence was just kind of normal. It was just the way it was. And then when she finally got away from him, we moved away she moved me and my brother out to Oregon for a year. But when we got back, she got with my stepdad, and it went from being like a Stephen King movie to more like Scarface. So it went from intense violence to intense crack cocaine and stealing entire delivery trucks and selling them at flea markets. And so growing up, I had every toy you could think of. I had all the Thundercats toys, all the G.I. Joe toys, all that. But that's because they were all stolen. And nothing was permanent, because every couple of months we would have to move because we were bouncing from place to place, running from authorities. And so I went to like 30 or 40 different schools, bounced around so often. There was many times in my life where I get woken up at 3 o'clock in the morning with someone throwing a duffel bag at me saying, grab everything you own. We need to get out of here right away. And I would have like 15 minutes to gather anything I could. And honestly, the only thing I would ever take with me was comic books. I'd grab my comic books and everything else would go. and I'd take those with me. And that was like my one safe spot, was superhero comic books. And so as I grew older, that abuse just kind of, it steamrolled. I was fat and smelly and dirty, and all the schools I went to, I always had a new crop of bullies, and they would always pick on me, and it would be, I was constantly the new kid. I never had any kind of like stability. I never was anywhere for long enough to feel like I was home anywhere. And I felt like my movie was I felt like my life was a really crappy movie that I just wasn't like I was just watching it. I felt like I had no agency at all in anything that was going on. And as I grew up, I started turning into a teenager. I started to get more into the darker side, because the violence seemed to be the only thing that kept me safe from other violence. I made myself more unappealing to keep everybody away from me. Everybody's always said I was dirty and smelly and filthy and didn't matter anyway. And when you hate yourself enough, you're going to do everything you can to make everybody else agree with you. And that's exactly what I was doing. I became that dirty, smelly, angry, mean person. And I describe it, I wrapped that darkness around me like a blanket and used it like a shield. Because when you live in that pain and you adopt it as your persona, it gets really like, it's like in music, they describe it as a spiral. Okay. And there's like there's a band called 9 Inch Nails. There's an album that came out around that time called Downward Spiral. And that was basically my autobiography. And there's one song on there called The Downward Spiral. And the imagery is just falling into the depths, go down deeper and deeper into the darkness, and there's nothing left and you just destruction. And that was the spiral I was on. And
so how old were you at this point, Aaron?
13, 14.
Okay, and you were living back in Denver, because we're talking to you in Denver right now, aren't we?
I'm in Denver right now, but I can't really say where I was living in each time because I moved so often. I had, let's see, 5 back and forth trips on Greyhound from Oregon to Colorado, 8 or 9 different trips by truck or car. I've moved, and in between each of those places, we stopped and lived in various spots. So I've lived in every state in between then, at least once or twice. And it's just, so when I think back of it, I don't really think of the places as much, because it was all just this crappy couch or that crappy floor or that, because I never had a bed. And if I did, it was just disgusting. And it was living in abject poverty and total abuse for years.
Aaron, what does that do to a child? Just being told that you're moving and always moving and never being able to settle somewhere. What impact does that have on a child?
Makes you feel like you're worthless. And especially when you're told you're worthless a lot. And it makes you feel like you just don't matter. Like you don't have any agency, like you have no control. And when the people that do have control are so blatantly destructive, it's just, it becomes a self-perpetuating prophecy that people tell you you're worthless. You say, okay, I'm worthless. And then you make yourself worthless. And as I turned into a teenager, I really started to get to that, because I couldn't live at home anymore, because I couldn't stand the extreme fighting. I would be walking into my house after I would come home from school, be talking to somebody on the phone, walk into the house. Now, here's an actual story. I walked into the house. Nobody saw me come into my house. I walked in, sat down at my TV, started watching TV, and I'm on the phone talking to my girlfriend at the time. And it was a landline phone. Like I'm sitting on the landline phone talking, because it was like 95, 96. And I hear a rumbling out in the living room. I open up my door. My stepdad has my mom up by the door by her throat, and he's holding her by the wall. And so I drop the phone, grab him, slam him into the wall, slam him into the kitchen, because I'm like 6 foot, 300 pounds, giant, angry. Like I'm already a huge teenager by this 14 years old. I'm big guy. And so I grab him, slam him around, throw him out the back door, get back on the phone, sit down, act like nothing's happening. because nothing, that was just my regular. And so I couldn't take that anymore. So I ended up being homeless and leaving there because I just couldn't take it. And I had, over the times of bouncing around and moving around, I had one safe spot. Okay. His name was Mike. And I met Mike when I was like 12 years old. And he lived in the house at the opposite end of the block of one of the houses that I lived at. And we bonded over comic books. We met actually at a comic shop and playing video games at a comic shop. And so over the years of moving from place to place, he was the one place that never shifted. Like, he was the one place that never, like, I still remember his phone number to that old house because his parents still live there. But when I got kicked out of my house, I basically ended up living in his shed, for lack of a better term, because I would bounce around. That was the only place that had a roof that I was sleeping in, because it was either that or the gravel outside of my girlfriend's bedroom or the park behind the restaurant Casa Bonita down the street. Like, it was, I would be bouncing around between those three places here in Denver. And if we were in Oregon, I wasn't homeless. I was living with the abusive family. And that was just another section of it. But I never.
So you got to a point where you would have rather have been homeless than live with your family?
Yeah, when I was like 14 years old. Got to that point. And the only real solace that I had was cutting myself. I still have scars to this day. I took to cutting myself all over my arms with just shallow cuts at first, because it was, I described earlier about not having any agency. I didn't have any agency over my feelings. And that seemed to be the only thing that felt real, was cutting myself in that pain. Even though it was more destruction, it was mine. And I owned it. And the years go by, 14, 15 years old. The pain at home just gets more and more and more intense. I'm living at home for a week or two, can't take it, go out and live on the streets for a while, come back because I'm out in the elements, so come home. It's just this vicious cycle that I'm bouncing between. And I have this circle of friends, they're not really actually friends that I had. I call them now disaster groupies, because they weren't actually, they didn't really care about me. They just were kids that wanted to watch the destruction. They wanted to watch the car crash and wanted to watch me flame out. They were basically living vicariously through my damage in a weird way. And so I had this group of friends, and instead of sitting around, we would sit around at, like, I had this one friend who his dad paid the rent for this house but didn't actually live there, so it turned into this like flop house with a bunch of teenagers, and we would just like hang out and party all the time. And we were, and instead of sitting around talking about like girls that we would date or the sports teams we would go see, we would actually fantasize about killing people. We would talk about, like, if you were going to kill 30 people, how would you do it? If you're going to kill a whole bunch of people, what would you do? And it would be like the fiction of the group, because it's basically just a bunch of hurt people talking about pain with no guidance. A bunch of super depressed kids with no guidance whatsoever on how to deal with these emotions, trying to find an in-group because nobody else is an in-group for them. So it was like the group of outcasts finding each other. And that, as the pain at home got more and more intense, and as I started to lose more and more resources because no one wants to have a dirty, smelly guy who hasn't washed their clothes in months, and hasn't had changed their shoes so much their feet are literally rotting off their feet, because I didn't change my socks for like 3 months at a time. And it was, there was a year that I didn't have a shower.
I mean, that is just insane. I mean, I'm a parent myself, and you know, just to think of like my girls in that situation at the age that you were at is just, oh my God, you can't even get your head around it. But what strikes me, and I thought this the first time I heard your story when we met just before Christmas, why didn't any adults raise the alarm? So your teachers, you know, maybe neighbors, maybe parents or friends, like, where were they? Why did no one step in to help you? I just can't.
Occasionally they did.
I just can't understand that, Aaron.
Occasionally they tried. Like, looking back, occasionally they tried. There was one time I remember, I didn't know what was going on at the time. I didn't see it at the time. But there was one time I remember that I was going to school. I was middle school. I was in like 5th or 6th grade, and I was just filthy. And I arrived at school, and there was a girl that had a bag full of clothes for me, and like a new coat and a bunch of school supplies. And she gave me all this stuff, and I took it home, and my mom got mad, like flipped out about it, and got so mad that somebody else was thinking that she was pitiful and she was a bad parent. She went to the school and blew up at the school about all of it, and I had to give it all back. And like, there was a constant fight against anybody trying to help. And after that, we left. And next thing I remember, I was at a different school. Like, they would just disappear. And I think that's why we were moving so much, is because they were running away from either authorities or social workers. I remember my mom getting in a fist fight with a social worker, and then we moved to another state because she was getting chased by the cops. And
so again, you know, why did social services not intervene sooner? Why did they not take you out of that situation?
The only time I ever talked to a social worker was when I called them on myself.
I mean, I've heard this before, but you need to tell this story again, because it's incredible.
So,
what kid, for a start, is in a position where they're calling social services on themselves? But carry on. It's just, yeah, it's crazy. Explain, Aaron.
So I am about 17 years old. The pain has gotten super intense. The cutting has gotten really bad. I was, the only place I had left to live at all basically was Mike's shed. His parents wouldn't let me stay in the house because I was a bad influence, and I had steal his things, and if I sat on their couch, they'd have to clean their couch afterwards, and it was just, they didn't want me in their house. And so, but he let me sleep in their shed, and he snuck me out dinner. And like, so he would eat and then bring me out food and like hang out with me, bring me stuff to do. And like, I always had music to listen to, stuff like that. And so,
do you think his parents knew that you were in the shed? Did he ever get caught feeding you?
No, he got caught with it afterwards and got in trouble. So no, they didn't know, not till the next morning. So, but I had been sleeping in that shed for weeks up until this point, off and on, like night here, night there. But so it's middle of the winter. It's getting to be really cold. It's rainy because the winter here doesn't start till almost spring. And over the snow here doesn't start till almost spring here. So it was in the like really super cold, rainy season. And so I'm in this shed, and the shed has like wood slats on the roof, like gaps in it. So like rain's kind of dropping down, and I'm in this gray chair. It's like this big recliner chair with big fluffy arms and stuff in it. There's like cobwebs everywhere. I remember it perfectly. And I'm cutting myself really super deep, and I'm like pooling blood on the floor underneath me. And I'm thinking, I got to do something other. I'm going to die. I have nothing to look forward to tomorrow. Tomorrow, all I'm going to do is wake up and go to find something to steal or some free sample to eat, to walk in a bathroom to scrub myself in. I need to get help or I'm going to die. And so the next morning, I got a phone book from Mike's mom. I knocked on the back door of Mike's house and asked Mike's mom for a phone book. And she gave me a phone book and bus fare. And I called social services, set an appointment for that afternoon to go see a social worker. Told them I needed help. And so by the time I got there, which was like 5 o'clock that afternoon, and this was early in the morning that I called, they didn't just bring me in, they also called my mom in. And we sit down at the table, and I produce a bloody razor blade that I had been using the night before. Throw it on the table, and they say, "What's your problem?" I say, "This is my problem." And I show them my fresh cuts, and I say, "I feel like I'm going to die. I feel like I'm going to hurt myself. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know what's going on." And my mom is the most practiced person in the world at getting people to not believe that. She got them to believe that I was just making it all up, that I was just doing it all for attention, that I'd done this all before, and I was just crying out. I was just throwing a fit. And they actually sent me home with her. And then as we left, we got a couple blocks away, and she turned and looked at me, and she snarled on me, and she said, "Next time you should do a better job, and I'll buy you the razor blades." and I just shattered that.
So just pause there. So your own mother basically encouraged you to kill yourself.
Yeah.
What
Told me
does that do? What does that do to a 17-year-old?
It's legitimately the worst sentence that I've ever been told in my entire life. It scarred me to this day. It's anytime it's brought up with or anytime it was brought up until I stopped contact with my mom, it was an immediate fight because she refused to ever see it. That she did that damage. But instantly all that darkness that I had been wrapped around with and all the kind of using dark, kind of being the angry person, I just screw playing with it. I'm diving in head first. And if you think I'm the monster, I'm going to be the monster now. I'm burning everything to the ground. And so for the next couple of months, 6 to 9 months, I just was on a tear of destruction. And that's during the time that I snuck into all of my family members' houses. I acted like I was nice with all my family members. I went into their houses, snuck into their closets, and burned every childhood picture of me.
Why, Aaron? Why did you do that? Why did you?
I wanted to destroy my history. I wanted to wipe me out of existence. And so my brother managed to find out what I was doing, and he saved like 3 or 4 pictures, which are literally the only pictures of me from that time or before that time, because I don't have baby pictures anymore, because I went into every family member's photo album and burned hundreds of them. And I just any kind of support system I just destroyed, because I knew in my heart at that point that I was worthless, that I wasn't worth, that anybody that told me that I was worth something must have been lying, and there wasn't anything left, and I might as well just destroy everything while I'm going. And
Aaron, what about your brother, Aaron? Like, was he also a victim of abuse, or was he kind of involved in it all?
Well, he was definitely he was a victim of the abuse. He was not a perpetrator of the abuse for me, but he has carried it on in his own self for the next generation. He's an alcoholic, drug addict, a wife beater. Like that's carried on. But it's during the time he was forced to be the dad. So he was the older brother. So he was forced to assume the role of dad of house. So he had to do all the cleaning. He had to do all the cooking. He had to clean. He had to earn the money, all that stuff. I was the cast off. Because he had to do that, I was nothing. And so I got all the abuse. And I'm sure I didn't get all the abuse. I'm positive he got abuse too. But it was.
Have you ever spoken about that with your brother?
Yeah. And that was the dynamic, was that he was the one that assumed the responsibility, and I was the worthless crap that got thrown off to the side. And I was always the black sheep of the family. Like he just kind of got into it. He started doing drugs early. He started getting into like smoking weed, all that stuff really early on, and just kind of got picked up into that tornado, that tsunami of pain that was my family. He just got sucked into it. And I tried to step back out of it, and it just still crushed me. And over that next couple of months, as I was destroying everything, I even started really burning down the relationship with Mike. That's what I really started stealing everything from him, and telling his parents I'd be there to get something else, walking up into his room and taking like $400 worth of comic books, and just taking them and selling them at a comic shop and taking the money. And it was purposeful at the time to burn all of my support systems down. Like I was trying to destroy people's trust and like of me. And it finally got to where I was absolutely at my bottom. I was in the field behind Casa Bonita.
Which is what? Where's that?
It's a giant restaurant here in Colorado. If you ever watch South Park, they actually did a whole episode about Casa Bonita. And
I have to look that one up. I like South Park actually. Yeah, it kind of rings a bell. I wonder if I have seen that one.
Yeah, it's it's this gigantic Mexican theme restaurant with like cliff divers and like people in gorilla costumes, and like it's the worst food in Denver, but it's a giant theme restaurant. but I was right behind it in this field. And I had been sleeping there for like a week. I hadn't eaten anything except for free samples from the grocery store next to the restaurant for a couple days. I had absolutely nothing left. And I was like, last time I went to social services, I warned them and they called my mom in. So I'm not going to warn them this time. I need to get help somehow. I'm in my bottom. And so across the street from my school at the time, which was North High School here in Denver, there was a building that said social services or said mental health. And I didn't understand at the time whether it had counselors or what it had in it. It just said mental health. So I went there cold, and there was a therapist there to see me. She was young. It was really weird. I did the same thing. I told her, like, here's my bloody razor blade. This is what I'm doing. I'm in a field. I got nothing. I have a hard time remembering how the conversation went because, honestly, the only sentence that I remember clear as a bell was what the last thing she said to me was. And it was, "I'm sorry, there's nothing I can do for you. I can't help you today." And I walked out of that door of that mental health building, and I felt my brain break. And I've always described all the pain that I was in before as this big tsunami of pain and anguish, this big, like, tornado, the movie I'm Not an Agency, and all these things just swirling around me. When I walked out of that door, I found out what was at the bottom of that. And underneath all that tsunami and underneath all that tornado, it gets really calm and it gets really quiet. And because when you don't have anything left to live for and you really don't have anything left to lose, then you just don't care.
Why was that the breaking point? Why not any of the other terrible, incidents that you've been involved with before then?
Because I had tried twice to try to get, it was my last gasp for help. I had told myself before going out, this is it. I have nothing else. There wasn't anything else in my world but dark. And all that plans, all the fantasy football kind of things that I did with my friends, the disaster groupies I was around before, that planning out, that just crystallized. That I already know what I'm going to do. I already have it all mapped out. We already talked about it. I'm going to walk in through those windows next to the food court. I'm going to take out as many people as I possibly can, and then hopefully get killed by this security guard. And I knew where to get a gun because it was mid-90s, so it was like right after Boys in the Hood era, so gangbangers were still really prevalent, huge in Denver area. And so there was a group of gangbangers that hung out next to the ROTC building at the end of the school. And they knew me because I was always around the school. Like, I was never in class, but I always, like, hung out at the park around the school because it was the only safe place to be. Otherwise, the cops would arrest you for truancy. And they knew I wasn't a narc. They'd sold drugs to my family. They saw me sleeping in the park. They knew I wasn't going to rat anybody out. And they had brought guns to school before and showed them off and, like, showed off pistols and stuff like that and, like, bragged about it. And so I went up to him and I'm like, "Hey, can you get me a gun? Hopefully one that shoots a lot of bullets." He's like, "Yeah, sure, dude, whatever. Get me an ounce. I'll do it for you." This is ounce of weed in mid-90s. That's like $300, $400 worth of marijuana. But for me, that wasn't a problem because my mom was a drug dealer. And we had people sleeping on her floor. I just walked into her house, grabbed an ounce of weed off someone sleeping on the floor and took it to the dude. Next day I brought it to him and I'm like, "Here you go." He's like, "All right, dude, give me 3 days. I have that for you." And so I was all set. If I got the gun, my plan was, as soon as I got the gun, I was either going to go to the school and kill as many people as I could, or down the street to the mall food court and kill as many people as I could. And the only thing that would change that plan would be time of day. And during that 3-day time, luckily I wasn't as alone as I thought, because looking back on it, I think I was saying goodbye. I went to Mike's house, and instead of everybody else in my life was treating me like I was either a monster or broken, like something either to be feared or to be fixed. Like, I was completely not a person. I wasn't human at all. But with Mike, it was different. He just brought me in. He's like, "Dude, you're going to be okay. You're just a person. you're a good kid in a crap world, is what he would always tell me. And it's like, you're going to be all right. You're going to make it through this. Luckily, when I was in that dark spot, I wasn't as alone as I thought I was, because I still had Mike. I look back on it now and I think that I was saying goodbye, but I went to Mike's house, and everybody else in my life, I was either a monster or I was broken. I was either something to be feared or something to fix. And Mike wasn't either of that. With Mike, I was just a person. And he just brought me in, and he's like, dude, you're okay. You're a good kid in the crap world. That's what he still tells me every day. He's like, you were just a good kid in the crap world. He uses different words, but family friendly. And he was like, you're going to be all right. You're going to make it through this. And he didn't know what I was planning. He didn't have any idea what was going to go on, but he thought that I was just going to hurt myself. And he just brought me in, gave me a shower, watched the movie with me, and being treated like your person when you don't even feel like a human will just change your entire world. And it did for me. And I ended up staying with Mike for 5 days. I never ended up going and getting the gun. And he changed my life. Still my best friend to this day.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that, because I know, because I'm friends with you on Facebook. He's godfather to your daughters. And what does that friendship mean to you?
The most important friendship of my life. Like, legitimately, he's the most important friendship I've ever had. He's saved me in ways that people will never, ever know about. He's the only human being on the planet that if he and my wife got in an argument and he called my wife some name, I'd have to be like, well, baby, what'd you do to make you mad?
Oh my God. I've heard you say that before, and I laugh every time. That's hilarious. What does your wife think to that, by the way?
She agrees. No, she agrees. She understands. Because also because he also never would. That's part of it. But yeah, no, he is closer to me than any of my family members besides the ones that I created myself.
That's amazing. It's so great to have such a deep friendship like that. Unbelievable. But so if we fast forward, so that was when you were in your teens. And then how did we get to inspiring this film that was released earlier this year? And so where did we, from there to there, what happened?
Well, that 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago, the Stoneman Douglas massacre happened. And we were sitting here watching, sadly, as the news was just starting to depersonalize again the potential killer and even the victims and everybody involved, and trying to blame whoever they possibly could, and making it more of the story about sensationalism than about any actual humans that are involved. And we were having this big tearful discussion, me and my wife and my oldest daughter. I have 4 kids now. I have a 19-year-old, a 17-year-old, a 13-year-old, and an 8-year-old. And me and my oldest daughter, and my wife, we're all talking. We're having this big tearful discussion about how could someone ever do this? And how could you ever get to that point? How could you ever feel like you could kill that many people?
And Aaron, can I just stop you there? So at this point, did your wife and kids know? Had you ever opened up to them about, what could have happened all those years before? Why? Why did you never, why had you never spoken to your wife about that?
Honestly, I always thought it was one of my dark secrets that no one should have ever known. I thought it was part of what made me the monster I always still thought that I was, up until even a couple years ago. I always thought that it was a weight that if anybody ever found out about it, they'd hate me. That if anybody ever found out about who I actually was, then they would know the real me and they would despise me. And I didn't want my family to do that. And So my wife knew about 60%. She knew about the pain of my upbringing, and she knew about that kind of stuff. My kids knew about 30% about what happened. But after I wrote, I literally went and sat on the toilet and wrote a Facebook post. And
many a Facebook post and tweet are sent on a toilet.
I believe so. Yes. Luckily, mine's not gold plated. But so yeah, I wrote a Facebook post about how I was almost a school shooter, and it wasn't really meant for public consumption. It was just meant for my family. And I came out, we had this talk about it. And my oldest daughter immediately started peppering me with questions, just started asking me every question under the sun. And it was just full reveal, just open up everything and talk to her about it. And so we sat for 3 or 4 hours and had a huge discussion about this whole thing with me and her and all of my kids. And that Facebook post by the next morning had gone Facebook viral. So a couple 100,000 likes and shares, kind of went around Facebook. And so my wife was like, hey, you might want to send this to the local news. They might like it. Because there's a local newsman, Kyle Clark, on Channel 6 or Channel 9 that we watch all the time. And he's a really friendly guy. And I sent it to him on Twitter. And he, the next day, sent out a camera crew and had me read the post on camera. And that got 17 million views. And it just kind of blew up. And the response that I got just took my breath away. It still does to this day. I started getting tens and thousands of messages of people all over the planet. Not just, they weren't the kind of messages like, hey, that's a cool story, or hey, that's a cool video. It was, hey, that's really cool, and here's all of my pain. And hey, that's a cool story, but here's everything that ever happened to me. And it was the most, I ended up with sorry, my clock is dinging. I ended up with like 40,000 diaries in my inbox, up to hundreds of thousands by now. But just thousands of diaries from people, the most private things. A guy in Pakistan messaging me, telling me that he couldn't talk about being abused because people around him would literally kill him. So he sent me 8 paragraphs of his pain. And he's still a Facebook friend. He's in my You Are Not Alone. And within the first week, I got 3 responses that just showed me that I need to keep talking about this no matter what, and no matter who might not like it. The first one was from a guy whose niece was actually in the room in Stoneman Douglas and had lost friends in the shooting. He said that to please keep talking about it because no one ever talks about it. I said, okay, I will. The next day I got a similar message from the Vegas survivors community. And then also from the Sandy Hook parents, the ones in Newtown who lost all the kindergartners. And if I can give any of those people even a small second of help and help get the message out that we need to stop this and pay more attention to people in pain, then I'm going to keep on doing it no matter what, because we need to do it. And so I started a Facebook group called You Are Not Alone. And it's grown to about 2,500 members, 2,600 members by now in 71 different countries. And it's all about supporting the love of people and supporting people who are in that dark place. And along that path, I was found by Johnny Santana, who was the kid in San Diego who saw my story, and he contacted me and said that it inspired him and he wanted to make, he was already in process of making a movie, but my story kind of changed his outlook on what his movie might be, and we could talk about it. And so his movie's it's not based on me, it is inspired by me. But it is definitely true to character and true to form. I fully 1,000% endorse the film. It's absolutely wonderful. Just Another Tuesday. And him and 150 San Diego teenagers all got together to work for this film, and it was just a fantastic piece. And I couldn't be more proud of it. And yeah, now I just try to spend as much time as I can trying to help as many people as possible get out of that dark place. My most proud achievement of everything is that my You Are Not Alone group has now prevented, we're at 18 suicides, 3 potential school shootings, and helped 2 people get out of white nationalism. So.
Wow. I mean, how does it make you feel that you are making an impact? Just the fact of you telling your story is helping others.
Well, that's a big question. There's 2 answers to that. First, it feels really rewarding and really humbling that I could have any impact whatsoever by just talking about my life. And then the flip side of it is I'm just talking about my life. So it's a bit weird, because if you think back to talking about your times in high school, how often do you tell your high school stories and people want to send a camera crew? Like, it's a bit strange. So it was a little much to, like, it was hard to absorb at first. The hardest part for me was anybody ever tell me that I was brave for coming out and talking about it, because to me, I still don't think that I'm brave talking about it. To me, bravery is acting in the face of fear. And I was never afraid to talk about it, really, because it was just me. I didn't talk about it because I didn't want people to hate me, but I was actually kind of used to most people hating me. Like, I thought everybody hated me by default. So I wasn't really afraid of it. And so when people came to me, were like, well, be careful, it might be trolls come after you and people might have negative responses to you. I didn't really worry about that very much, except for what might happen to my family. So we immediately locked down all social media and everything for my family, made sure all my privacy settings are closed, all that good stuff. But as far as me talking about it, if I can help even one person figure out that they matter when they don't feel human, and help them realize that they're a person, and that as dark as it seems, that as long as they keep going, that there's light, then I'm going to keep on talking about it, because someone has to. And I know it might put people off a little bit if a big hairy guy starts crying on stage, but hey, I'll do it.
If I'm looking behind you, I've seen that quote on Facebook, the only way out is through. Like, how have you been able to stay so positive? I mean, you've come through kind of the darkness, but how are you, I'm incredulous in a good way at your positivity. And, where did that come from?
It came from a lifetime of hating myself in a weird way. I mean, for my whole life, I thought that I was worthless. And so now I say I followed the 3F rule. If you don't feed me, fornicate with me, or finance me, I don't really have to pay attention to your opinion of me. And so, if depending on those 3 F's, depending on which one of those 3 you do, that'll be how much I let your opinion impact my personality. And now, I managed to make it through all of that. I managed to make it through that dark side. Sorry, Scooby's going crazy because my door just opened up.
So, Aaron, that was really timely, because I was actually going to ask you about how have you managed to become this family man when you didn't have a family? Not really.
I literally use my family experience as a rule for my own. I tell my kids all the time, I model my own parenting on what my parents did. I just do the opposite. So, I tell my kids I love them obscenely amounts. Like, every conversation I have, I say I love you to start, I say I love you to end it. And
what do they think to that? What do they think when you're always telling them that you love them?
I think they like it. But I tell them it's because I never got it. I'm a big proponent right now of smell every single rose. Smell every single flower that you pass. Pay attention to every bit of sunshine, because who knows if tomorrow's going to be here. And I literally did make it through the dark. And now I have the best possible light that I could have with my wife and my children, everything. And me talking about the darkest pain of my life, instead of being vilified, instead of having an army of people with pitchforks coming to burn me at the stake, I instead got nothing but love and support from people I would have never imagined. And it crosses every bit of barrier. All the walls that we normally put up socially that we think separate us as society, they don't exist for me right now. Like, I can have the same deep conversation with a business person wearing a fine tailored suit and the homeless person sitting next to the bus stop. The same conversation about the same pain. And but with the Republican and the Democrat, with the atheist and the deeply religious, there's all of the barriers that we put up, that we use to stratificate and separate and cut apart our society, I just walk right through them. And it's only because I think the true bipartisan thing in all of this is, sadly, we all feel that same sense of pain and isolation. We all know what it's like to feel alone. And we all know what it's like to feel like we're worthless. And more of us need to be able to talk about it, because there's so many of us that get told, if you talk about your emotions, it's bad. And if you express your feelings, and if you talk about things like mental health in a real way, and not just platitudes by saying mental health, people use these graying terms, mental health and gun control, and these things that just obfuscate the entire issue. If you say mental health, it's this big gray amorphous blob. And what exactly does that mean? You can't wrap your hands around it. You don't really have any idea about it. But if you break it down and you say, I was depressed and felt alone because I was told I was worthless most of my life. Now you got to address the facts, and you got to see me as a person. You have to see me as the human and not just the label, because trust me, the label has been a stopping point. One of the negatives that came out of this is coming out with my story and having I was almost a school shooter be the first thing that comes up if you Google my name, meant that when I went to go get a job, I couldn't, because I would go to try to get a job, and the first thing jobs do now is Google you. And if you Google me, all you see is I was almost a school shooter. And if you don't click, and if you don't listen, and if you don't read the article, then you're not going to hire me.
So has that really kind of impacted your life negatively in that sense, from like a job?
Yeah, it kept me from a job for like 9 months. I finally got a job at Starbucks because I happened to get a store manager who had seen my video.
Wow. Oh, I'm shocked at that. That I kind of, I understand that, as you said, if you didn't kind of read on, that might be quite a shocking headline. But you're such a clever guy, Aaron. I mean, like, where's the future's kind of endless for you. Where do you see yourself in kind of a few years' time? What do you want to do?
I'm trying to write a book. I have a couple negative strikes that I'm fighting against. I spent my entire life rebelling against the school system, so I never got my degree. I never got a diploma. I got a GED.
Hey, listen, let me just tell you something. So I went back to university and got my master's degree age 35, and I was a single mum with 2 kids, and I didn't actually complete my undergrad degree because I got a job and took the job as a journalist instead of finishing my undergrad. So I had to beg to be allowed onto this course, and luckily, because of my professional experience, they allowed me to go onto the course, and I got my master's degree and I went on to work for the BBC. So the reason I'm telling you this is because it's never too late, and I was doing it as a single parent, and I know that you can, so you can do it.
And I trust me. I appreciate that, and I'm trying, because I'm hoping to parlay my intelligence and ability to try to do this as a full-time thing somehow, some way. As a therapist, as a counselor, as an advocate, as a speaker. Right now, public speaking is kind of at a dead stop, because who wants to have a gathering of 1,000 people? But that's in the future. Like I'm writing a book, but I'm struggling with being. I work at a Starbucks. Like I hit the fame part, but I haven't found the fortune part. So I got all the notoriety with none of the actual benefit of it.
Well, what? It's not all about the money, but I get you.
Oh no, trust me, it's not.
Do you know what, though, Aaron? You've been an excellent counselor. I could really see you doing that. I really could.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. What do you think of Aaron now? What do you think of Aaron?
Of Aaron now?
Yeah.
I'm actually really proud of me. I'm really proud of me. I'm really happy with who I am. I think I'm an excellent father. I think I'm an excellent husband. I think I'm a really excellent friend. I think that I pride myself on wanting to know as few false things and as many true things as possible. I am logical in all ways. Logic over everything for me. And I'm really happy with me. I'm in the best place that I've ever been in my life. And at the same time, I'm still fighting demons every day of feeling insecure. And it's a constant fight, because depression's real. Because it's hard to know. Sometimes it's hard to know, what's the best way to put it? Sometimes I feel like I have two lives that are on two parallel tracks that never really cross. And I can have on one time I'm having like a conversation with some person that I would never imagine being able to talk to, and on the other time I'm dealing with having $100 less on my rent than I need to, and I'm constantly fighting against the demons of my life that have fought me my entire life, but I'm winning a lot more now.
Okay, so where do you get help from? Like, who's helped you to like get onto this path, this positive path?
That's a good question too. Most of it was self-directed, honestly. My wife would be the biggest positive source. My wife and Mike would be the two biggest positive sources in my life. I didn't get professional help until I was older. I did get therapy as an adult. And I've been through.
How did your therapy help?
Not as much as you would think, because as a teenager, one of my hobbies was reading psychological textbooks. I'm a sponge of information. So odd fact about me, when I was a small infant, I was like 4 months old, I had severe spinal meningitis, and it ate a portion of my brain. And because of that, I have some disabilities and some enhancements. Like, I've never driven a car. I'm 40 years old. I've never driven a car in my life. And I can't put things together. I have spatial dynamics. My hands, it doesn't work good for me. My brain fritzes out. I can't draw things. I can't put things together, but I can explain multiversal physics, or I can talk about the religious history of the United States going back to the 1700s, or like I can do history, philosophy, science, religion, that intellectual topics really well. I can't use my hands at all. And my brother kind of got the flip side of that. My brother's a master mechanic, and so he is a gearhead and works with cars all day long and doesn't care about any of those other subjects. So yeah, kind of ended up two mirror images of it.
How's your relationship with your family today, especially with your mum?
Non-existent. It's been 2 years since I've spoken to my mom. 2 years, I think possibly 2 years as of today, as a matter of fact. The last day I spoke to my mom was the day, no, it was 2 years about a month ago, because it was the day that I got approved for my TED Talk. I was on the way home from a TV appearance. I just got off the phone with the TED Talk organizer, and I got a call from my mom saying that she saw me on TV and I was a worthless piece of crap and should be dead. And that's the last time I talked to her. And I haven't spoken to any of my family. I have two little sisters who are 10 years younger than me, who are absolutely just victims in all of this and have nothing to do with any of the abuse. And I keep in contact with them. But other than them, I don't keep in touch with any of my family on that side at all, really.
I mean, would you like to try and forge a relationship of some sort with your mum, or I mean, do you feel that you're kind of better off, without her in your life?
Yes to both of those, I think, is the best answer to that. I would be open to having a relationship with her if reality was actually addressed and changes were made. But given that 6 months before my TED Talk, my stepdad finally died in a literal pool of his own filth in the middle of a drunken fight with my mom, that hasn't shifted over there. The chaos is still going. That damage is still constant. And so if that's the case, then yeah, then I would be better off without her in my life. So yes to both.
How has becoming a father changed your feelings towards your family, and how do you view your childhood now that you're a parent?
That's a great question. Being a father changed me fundamentally and absolutely to my core. Being a father, you asked me earlier what was the big shift that helped me. That was the biggest one. So along the process of me in the 25 years in between incident and me coming out with my story, there was a good 15 years of personal growth and reflection. The biggest process in that being a series of confrontations where it wasn't accusatory. I didn't go to people and be like, you need to pay, and you did this, and you need to pay for it. It was literally just, this is what happened. I know this is what happened. It's the reality of the situation, and our relationship has changed fundamentally because of it. And it had nothing to do with their response. It was about me getting it off my chest. So that was the first biggest process. But then when I was almost 30, I had my first kid, because my two oldest are my stepkids. Those are technically stepchildren. My 13-year-old's my first for me. The 8-year-old's with me and my wife together. In my house, there's no step. That's why I have 4 kids. I don't have any step. But anyway.
Yeah, I love that, Aaron. And it should be like that. I love it.
Yeah, I'm not stepdad. I'm just daddy. And so when I had my 13-year-old, that changed me. That actually was the first time in my life that I had something to live for, that I had something that mattered to me. Before that, when a constant conversation Mike and I would have would be, he would ask me what I wanted to do with my life. What dream did I have? And I never had an answer for him. My answer would always be, I don't have a dream. I don't have any idea I'm not going to have a life. What future do you see? And when I had my 13-year-old, that changed. I had a life and I had a future and I had something to live for. I had something that mattered that I had to work to keep mattering. And so that was the big start of dropping that blanket of darkness and dropping all of the affectations of being the mean, aggressive one, or being the dark, angry one, or dropping all of that stuff, because it's really just fake. It's a true thing that chaos cannot sustain itself. And when you are in that darkness for that long, you are just holding up a costume, the same as anybody else. And if you don't realize that, that's to your own peril, because people build their walls and their facades out of the stuff around them, and yours just happen to be built out of bad things. And so once that started to crumble, and once that persona started to have kinks in it, and I started to see that I actually did like kids, and I was pretty good with them, and I actually did like things like emotions and feelings and like having like friends and things like that. Like those things were experiences I could actually like experience now, and it was kind of a revelatory thing. And at the same time, Mike and actually my brother at the same time pushed me to go to college. I was in college when I met my wife, and so I ended up going to school. Never go to college America. It's a scam school. It's not worth it. The credits there don't transfer to anywhere else, so do not go to college America. But I found that out after the fact. But it was that process of kind of growing out of it. My kids were a huge part of it. And so now when being a dad is literally my favorite thing in my whole life. It's my top job, my top activity. What I would choose to do in my fun time, if you give me a fun afternoon, let me sit down, hang out with my daughter, watch a movie, hang out with my son, go play a video game. Then I'll go sit down with my other daughter, color a rainbow. Then me and my wife might sit down and watch a TV show. Or we all go out and eat dinners together and go do something. Everything about me revolves around my family. And that's because I finally have something that I won, you know. When I was 19 years old, I'm telling stories right now about what happened when I was 19 years old. My 19-year-old is my best friend, and tells everybody I'm her best friend. So I won.
So Aaron, 2 years ago, you had something that has literally changed your life. Tell me what it was.
Whew. Well, at the same time I was doing all this public speaking thing, I decided to cram every life-changing thing into the same month. And so I had gastric sleeve surgery. I got really unhealthy for a while. I was almost 500 pounds. I was 468 pounds. And here's a good story for it. Okay. So I got really, really big and I got a leg infection. This was November of 2016. November of 2016. I got a really bad leg infection, like super, super bad, where I got cellulitis of my leg. I almost lost my lower left or lower right leg. And I was bedridden. I couldn't move at all, couldn't wash, couldn't do anything for myself. And I was really depressed. And I was sitting on my couch and having a really sad moment and crying and flipping out. And I screamed, I just want to crawl into a hole and disappear. And Katie, my 18-year-old at the time, or 16 at the time, stood up and she jumped up and said, you're not going to do this. You're not going to give up. You're going to fight and you're going to be the dad that I deserve. And you're going to keep on doing it because you can do it. You're going to fight and you're going to win. And I said, okay. And the next day I cut out soda entirely. I was literally drinking a 12-pack a day and having a 2-liter with dinner. And I stopped soda cold. Haven't had a soda in 3 years, almost 4 years. And I completely changed my diet. I went on a 9-month monitored weight loss program, and I dropped from 468 pounds to 430 pounds to get myself cleared for gastric sleeve surgery. Then I had the sleeve surgery in April 23rd of 2018. And since then, I have lost over 200 pounds, and I now sit today at 263 pounds. And I went from literally being so big that if I walked from here, the 15 feet to my bathroom, I would get winded and out of breath, to now I measure my walks by horizons. I look how far I can see, and I walk that far, and then I look again and walk that far. And I usually go 6 or 7 horizons.
Oh my gosh. I mean, how has your life changed since losing all that weight? What can you do now that you just couldn't do then?
Walking is my favorite activity. Like literally, I will, if it's less than 5 miles away, my wife knows to not even ask me if I need a ride.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. But like, what led to you becoming that heavy in the first place? Was it like a slow build up, or was it, something
that was actually, in a weird way, it was increasing my job prospects. I spent a long time working fast food, so I always ate unhealthily. I always had really bad eating habits, okay? I would eat a really massive meal at the end of the day, but not really eat anything else. And when I say a massive meal, I mean a massive meal. Well, I would have like a full dinner-sized plate of going edge to edge, entire rim around of like this big mound of chili dog, and I would eat that, okay? And so I would have, but it would be like midnight that I would have that, and I wouldn't have anything else the rest of the day. But I would just slam soda constantly. But working fast food, I was working enough to where I was kind of sweating that off. But I was staying kind of at a manageable weight of around 330. Wasn't super big. It wasn't skinny by any means, but I wasn't big enough to be unmobile. Okay. But then I changed jobs. I went from working doing food service to I got a job working at a computer place. I started doing e-commerce for a light bar company, and that meant that I doubled my pay, but I also sat at a computer for 8 hours a day. So since I didn't work all day long, when I was doing food service, I would work and only drink water while I was working because soda made my stomach hurt. So I would have like 8 hours a day with just exercise, drinking water to kind of balance out the completely unhealthy rest of my day. But working computers, I sat down. Now I'm bringing food with me because now I have enough money to make my own dinners. So I'm bringing my own food with me, sitting there drinking my soda while I'm working my computer. And so that time of unhealthy food just doubled, and I had no exercise time. So in the space of a year, I gained like 150 pounds. Like I just exploded in weight really quickly and just got super unhealthy. And having that surgery and changing my diet life, changing what I eat, changing when I ate, was literally the best decision I've ever made in my life, because I would not be alive next year without it. I had a heart attack. I had a heart attack at 38 years old.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So lifestyle wise, like what do you do now then? Like tell me in a normal day, what do you eat now compared to what you would have done before?
Well, I eat a lot of meats and cheeses because my body mostly only processes protein. So I would go more vegetarian, but I can't process much salad. It just doesn't work for me as easily. So I'm on mostly protein diet. But the biggest change was cutting out anything with high fructose corn syrup. So not just soda, but anything containing high fructose corn syrup. Get
Yeah.
that out of your life.
Yeah, you know what? It's funny you said that, Aaron, because I always check the back of any packaging, especially when I'm buying stuff for the girls. And if it's got high fructose syrup in, we don't buy it. And they know that. In fact, they know now to like check because they know I just won't buy it. It's got that.
The biggest thing. If you're doing that right now, that's a giant gold star because that is the worst thing to have in the house. Is anything with that because it's liquid sugar and it's more addictive than heroin. And I know firsthand that cutting out sugar is you go through withdrawals. Like it can get bad. And so now the biggest other change is time management. Instead of having one massive meal at midnight, I wake up, I have, come in quickly, I'm on an interview.
You know, can I just ask you about soda? Because I know people that like love soda, and like how difficult was it to cut that out? Because I mean, I don't drink it at all, but I've heard that it's very addictive.
The hardest. It was the hardest. That was out of everything I had to quit because I wasn't just soda. I also had to quit. I can never have again pasta, rice, or much bread ever again. And I was a huge pasta fan.
Why is that, Aaron? Is that because it just doesn't agree with you, or what's the reason?
Yeah, it's because the surgery. I had sleeve surgery, which means there's two kinds of gastric surgery. There's sleeve surgery and there's bypass. Bypass, they take out all the stomach. Sleeve, they leave some of it, so I have like a banana-shaped stomach. But with that, the part that digests food got removed. So I take like 6 times as long to process my food as anybody does.
Oh, wow.
I have something like rice or pasta, instead of dissolving, it turns into this like glunk, and then it doesn't feel good. So
how big a portion size can you eat now?
I can only have like a 6 to 7 ounce portion size of anything. Like I literally went, here's the way I measure it. Because I still love eating. I've always loved chili dogs. I like bratwurst in particular. I've always loved them for some reason. I used to have 5 bratwurst with buns, with cheese, covered in a whole can of chili, and then another layer of cheese on top. And that would be my dinner. Okay. Now I will have 3 sausages with no bun, nothing else whatsoever, and I am stuffed. I am absolutely stuffed with just 3 bare hot dogs. Like that's the limit for me.
So that's kind of like an Atkins/keto diet, really, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty much. Where I pretty much put my body into keto, but that's just because of what I can eat now. Like I drink mostly coconut milk and water and tea, and I work at Starbucks.
Aaron, what tea do you drink? Because I'm a tea drinker. Because I'm obviously from England, and I love tea. What's your favorite tea?
Ooh, that's a hard one. My personal favorite is I went on a trip to Mississippi and I had authentic Southern sweet tea, and that is delicious. If you haven't tried that, try that. But that's too sweet for me. Bit too sweet.
How about?
But I like green tea a lot. I like green tea a lot. I like the flowery ones. So like strawberry chamomile. That's a really good one.
Yeah, I've started drinking a little bit more herbal tea, but I'm quite hardcore. I like my English breakfast tea with milk.
Yeah?
I have milk in it. Oh, yeah.
We get a lot of the English breakfast lattes at Starbucks. Yeah? We do a lot of those. Yeah? I'm not a big fan of the matcha. I don't like the matcha tea.
Well, you know what? The funny thing is, when I go to Starbucks, I always order a latte because I don't generally drink coffee at the house. I drink tea all day. So when I go out to somewhere like Starbucks, I always order a grande blonde latte, single shot with soy milk and honey, just because I'm a bit of a diva. Would I be one of those customers if I run that order up to you? You know, if you were serving me in Starbucks, like what would you think to that order? Would you be like, oh my God, what a diva?
That's nothing. No, that's nothing. No. The worst ones aren't the ones who have their order that they know it. Like I know I have this order and I want I want a white chocolate with this shot and this shot. That's fine. The ones we don't like are the TikTok orders. If you saw an order on Snapchat or you saw some recipe on Instagram and you come in saying, do you have the mochaccino cherry fudge? No, I don't.
Oh my God, do people really do that? Is that really a thing?
All day.
God.
All day. And then they'll come in and be like, well, I only have this video. They don't have the recipe, but they have the video. I'm like, well, you know, you could extrapolate. So
that's hilarious.
Yeah.
So we've just discovered puppuccinos. Do you know that's got puppuccinos? Little drinks for dogs. They're like these little these little mini like cups, and then I think they just fill them with cream. Oh, I've got my. Have you made one of those before, Aaron?
All day long. All day. Oh yeah.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Right now, with the coronavirus shutting down everything, I'm in a drive-through restaurant, so our drive-through still open. Our lobby's closed, so I have dogs coming through the drive-through all the time.
Oh, that's so funny. Hey, what are the lines like? Because I know that our drive-through is the only Starbucks that's open, and the line or the queue is just crazy.
It gets pretty insane. It can get pretty insane. We do a lot of business. Yeah, sometimes 15 cars deep. It can get pretty bad, but that's because I'm in an area where I think we're the only drive-through place within like a 3-mile radius after a certain time, because now with the stay-at-home orders, everywhere with the lobbies closed. So after like 6 o'clock at night, I think we're the only place that serves anything. So yeah, no fun, but at least I still have a job.
Yeah, I know. And, that's something to be thankful for right now. I know there are a lot of people sitting there right now, or maybe listening to this, that aren't in work. So, yeah, you're right. At least you have a job. That's how we've got to think about things right now. And by the way, how's kind of quarantine going for you and your family? Because I know, like, your youngest, she's obviously not at school.
No, but she has taken to this e-schooling so quickly. They gave her a Chromebook. They gave her a computer from her school. And every morning I wake up, by the time I wake up at like 8 or 9, she's already on her schooling and she's already midway through her assignments. And she's 8. So by the time that she's a teenager, she's going to be so fluent in all of this that it's just going to be.
Yeah, I agree, Aaron. I mean, I've got a 9 and an 11-year-old, but my 9-year-old especially, she gets up, she gets ready without me, she makes her own breakfast, and then she's already started her work. It's like, wow. That's impressive. So
sure. I mean, now the older
really
ones,
the
17-year-old, that's a different story. That's 17-year-old doesn't like to get up in the morning and do schoolwork. So, but what 17-year-old boy really ever does? So
that's funny. Oh my gosh. But yeah, like you say, I mean, I've been impressed with how they've kind of taken to this. I mean, they do miss the social aspects of school for sure. I mean, what feedback have you been getting from like your kids as to what they're missing right now?
The biggest thing is the friends, having friends. Yeah, locally, we've done a really good job of having people that have self-quarantined and self-regulated. So now after a couple months, we're pretty safe and like, okay, that friend has been by themselves for this month and they're okay. They might be able to come over and see us. So we're kind of starting to slowly reconnect. That's why Morgan's Dathan's girlfriend, and that she's, just now starting to come back around because of that same kind of thing. She had to go make sure that her place was all stable for a while, and it's going to be weird. The biggest things that everybody misses right now are the big gatherings. We always love to go out as a family. We go out to eat once a week, and we can't do that right now. So.
Yeah, us too. That's what we do. Fridays and Saturdays, we make a point of going out for a family meal, and we can't do that right now. Although what we are doing is we're trying to support the local businesses, so we are like having takeouts, on Friday night. Yeah, because we've got some great local restaurants here, Aaron. I don't want to see them go under.
No, not at all. I'm so sad. There's a couple industries that I really are that as a kind of nerd, some of the things that I love the most are almost going to be destroyed because of this. The comic book industry, for instance, is almost entirely decimated because Marvel Comics, the biggest company in the industry, hasn't put out a comic book in the entire month of April because there's no stores open to sell them. And so there's a big chance that this might actually kill print comic books. Like we might lose physical books.
You know what? I've heard the same about the newspaper industry and magazines. I mean, they're struggling anyway. And then now this is here, and you're right. I think certainly like local publications could not recover from this. Hey, I wanted to ask you about comics because like throughout this story, you know, that comics and comic books have like made a regular appearance. They're obviously something that you love. Like, what is it about them that you love so much?
Escapism. It started as escapism, that it was a place where like a world that was just mine. Like no one else was reading them. I read all of them, so it was all mine. I found a love for them when I was really young. My grandparents, when I was living in Oregon, they ran a series of antique stores. And so they owned a bunch of antique stores up and down the coast. And when I was really, really young living up there, they got a bunch of really old 50s comics, like the pre-Marvel DC days, like early comics, like even before, like 1920s comics. And so I started reading like Beetle Bailey and like all those old like newspaper strip kind of books. And then they got this one set that was the first like 100 issues of the first series of X-Men. And I got to read that in original form when I was like 6 or 7 years old, the like original 1963 X-Men. And I just fell in love. I just got hooked, and I read so much about it. I mentioned my brain sucks in information. I know more about superhero comic books than any human really has a right to, I think. And
who's your favorite superhero?
Oh, I've always been a big X-Men fan, because the X-Men they're mutants, but they're born with their powers, and so they can't help getting it. And most of the time, it's not beneficial. Like there's a lot of mutations that they get that make them outcasts, make people hate them, but they're trying to just be good, but they're come out with like my favorite two characters growing up there was one Nightcrawler. He's this blue furry looking, looks like a demon with this big long tail, 3 fingers on each hand. And his power is he teleports. He disappears in this puff of black flame and smoke and bounces around in different places. But his personality is he's actually a priest. And he wants to be a swashbuckler. So he loves like old Errol Flynn pirate movies. And like he loves like comedies and romance novels. And like he's this big like Broadway show fan. But he looks like a demon. But he's like the sweetest character. So there was him, and then this other character named Angel that was a normal guy with wings, and he would fly around, and his power was just he had wings, but he got his wings cut off, and they got replaced with these evil metal wings that would throw out these poisonous metal knives, and he got turned into the Archangel. And I always identified with those two characters. Like those were just my favorites. And even to this day, Marvel Comic Books has an app where you can pay $10 a month and read unlimited comic books. I've read $1,000 in comics in the last couple of days, because what else am I going to do in pandemic times?
Wow. What about your kids? Are they into comics too?
They like the movies. They love the Marvel movies. No one else really reads the comic books but me.
Have you been to Comic-Con here in San Diego?
I have not. I would love to.
Oh my gosh.
I've always dreamed about going to Comic-Con in San Diego.
So you need to do that next year for your 10th anniversary, because obviously it's not going to be happening this year, is it? But maybe next year.
Yeah, no, that would be really fun. The thing with San Diego, though, that's become less and less a comic book convention and more of mass media convention.
Okay.
That's more like a Hollywood one. But yeah, there's the Denver comic book convention. I've went to that a couple times. In fact, I got to be assistant to one of my favorite artists ever for a year. That was really fun.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
How cool is that? Well, yeah, I actually don't know anything about comics, or all these characters you're telling me about. I need to research because I don't. It's kind of
you don't need to research. You're fine not knowing. It's okay.
Okay. you don't feel I'm missing out by not being a.
Well, I mean, I love the fact that everybody in the world knows them now because of superhero movies, but I've never been the type to be like, oh, you have to learn everything about it, the thing I love. Nah.
Okay, so I want to ask you a question then, because you're obviously like a total fan and an expert. How do the films compare to the books?
They haven't done an X-Men movie yet.
Okay.
They've made movies with characters that say they're X-Men, but they haven't done a movie yet. I'm excited for the Marvel. Marvel just got the rights back to those, because those were all made by Fox. And so Marvel just bought the rights back to all those movies. And so those are going to join the actual Marvel Cinematic Universe with the Avengers and all those guys. And they're going to do a real X-Men movie.
So what's missing then right now?
Oh, everything. They took like 30 years of stories and chopped it up into little tiny pieces and slammed it together in a really weird way. Like, in the X-Men movies, Mystique is the main character and the main member of the X-Men. She's never been an X-Man. She's a villain. Like, she's never actually been on the team. She's just been a villain in the books. But in the movies, she's played by Jennifer Lawrence. So of course she has to be the main character. And so, yeah.
Well, I will take your word for that, because as I've said, it would be far-fetched to say that I was any type of comic expert. But Aaron, listen, I could talk to you for hours and hours, but I know you've got to get to work. So it's just been a pleasure. And as I said right at the beginning, I wanted to speak to you from the day we met at the film premiere. I'm so thrilled that we've actually been able to make it happen. I absolutely want to check back in with you in a couple of months and see how things are. And we're going to get Johnny Santana on the show as well. So
awesome.
Yeah, he's the director of the film that was inspired by you. So he's a great guy too.
Yes, please. And if anybody was watching, please check out Just Another Tuesday. It's an amazing film. It's available right now on YouTube. It was a work of love by a bunch of wonderful people and trying to help in this really troubling time. Just spread the message that you are not alone.
Yeah, great film. And as you said, it's well worth checking out. But Aaron, how can people get hold of you? If people want to contact you, follow you, how can they do that?
You can find me on Facebook. Look up my group, You Are Not Alone. It's all one word. Each word is capitalized, but it's all squished together, so You Are Not Alone. You can also find me on Twitter at StarkDad1313. You can email me at aaronstarkauthor@gmail.com if you want to. I'm open and available for any speaking engagements or seminars or any question and answers, any panels, any kind of outreach I can do whatsoever. Try to help as many people as I can find a way out of that darkness. And yeah, I'm an open book. And anybody that has any questions, there's nothing too personal. There's no question off limits. So
yeah, I love that about you, and I got that impression straight away that you're just so happy to share your story, and I'm full of admiration. Aaron, you're doing a fantastic job. Give my love to your family, and be sure to let me know when you're in San Diego, and we'll do lunch or a coffee or something.
I will. Thank you very much. Have a great day. Thank you, Claire.
Yeah, same to you, Aaron. All the best. Bye.
Bye.